What a very warm welcome again, guys. Hi, it's Kasim. Welcome back again to Journal Entries and Casimotive. I hope you're well. I hope your week has been good. So there's quite a number of things that I wanted to, I think we're in episode 3 now. And there's a number of things that I wanted to talk to you about. And just to reiterate, in case you haven't watched any of the other journal episodes and journal entries, essentially I started journal entries because I hold a philosophy which I think is a very strong philosophy, which is that ultimately, look, not everybody can become a champion. Not everybody is going to reach the highest echelons of life. Not everybody is going to become CEOs, directors of companies, partners in organizations. Not everybody is going to become a political figure or get themselves to a position where they have huge amounts of power that they can leverage to help their children. But every single one of us does have lessons. We have principles, we have stories, we have ideas that we've accumulated over the duration of our lives that actually, in my opinion, are a lot more valuable to the next generation and would serve the next generation far much more than the accumulation of these material sort of external accolades that many of us, I think make a holistic and successful life. So I essentially want to encourage you to begin to write some of those down, to write down what your ideas are about success and about happiness and about relationships, to really write down and condense what principles and keys and ideas about the world, about relationships, about interaction, about communication, about language, about what works in terms of building a family home, about how we can meet our internal needs. And really just write them down with the view that one day you can pass them on to the next generation. That's really why I started journal entries, and I want to lead by example. I want to lead by example in that I want to show you some of the entries that I've written down in my diary and in my journals. So let's go through some of them and talk about what I've been reflecting on, what I've concluded this week. So one of the things that I've concluded, which I think is really important, there was a phrase that I read the other day, and it went like this: don't chase butterflies because they will fly away. Instead, build a beautiful garden and they will come. And if they do not come, you will still have a beautiful garden. So yesterday afternoon, I was cooking dinner. Well, I wasn't cooking dinner actually per se. Yesterday afternoon, I was cooking my daily prep. So every single week, I cook essentially my lunches for the next 6 days. And I spend an afternoon every Sunday doing this. And my neighbor came over and we were having a conversation. And my neighbor said to me, I asked actually my neighbor when she was going to start dating and things like this. And she put the question back to me and she said, well, Kasim, why are you single? You seem like a good guy. You seem like a great person. Why is it that you're single? And I explained something which is what I've really been reflecting on, which I wanted to share with you, which is that the reason why I'm single isn't out of choice. I'm not a bitter person. Of course, I've had experiences in my life where things haven't worked out in relationships. I do see the advantage of having a relationship. I do see the advantage of having someone, a partner, someone to go through life with, right? And one of the things that I shared with my neighbor Michelle is that, look, I think there is a lot of us in life that think that having a boyfriend or a girlfriend or partner is somehow a negative, that somehow there is no advantages to it. But of course, the reality is there are advantages to having someone who you can go through life with, and that person can help fulfill some of the needs that you have as a person. Now, one of the things that I said to Michelle is, look, if you speak to many women out there, Many of them will say to you, and this is what the experience that I've certainly had. When I've spoken to many women have, that will talk about how they have sexual needs, and they could use a vibrator or whatever they want to use in terms of to fulfill their own sexual needs. But when I listen to some of the best and the experiences that people talk about when they found a partner, someone they feel safe with, someone who they love, someone who they're connected with, the kind of sex that they have with that partner is unparalleled, it's unmatched. And so not only that, but I said to Michelle yesterday that there are women out there, and of course there's always exceptions to every rule, but the average woman, the majority of them, wouldn't necessarily feel safe. Their safety needs wouldn't necessarily be fulfilled by living by themselves in the middle of nowhere, and even sometimes living in a busy area, right? Now, that doesn't mean that of course, you need a man or a woman to fulfill you in life. But what I did say to her is that there are certain aspects of other people that we do need in order to fulfill certain aspects of being a human being, right? So there is a reason why human beings were so social, and I think we gather in groups. I do think there is some advantages to it. So I was explaining to her why it was that I was single. And part of the reason goes back to the statement that I gave you earlier on, which is the reason why I'm single is because the kind of woman that I would like to date is so specific and so rare that in order for me to be able to even have a chance with that kind of a woman, I would first need to become the kind of man who would be worthy of having such a woman. And the issue that I had was, and one of the things that I said to Michelle yesterday, is that I would not want my partner, I would not want her to work when we have children, right? I would not want her to, and we got into this argument because Michelle said, well, there are some women who can be highly successful in their business career and be a great mum. And I said, absolutely. But the point that I said is, I do not believe that a lot of women can be able to do that. And there are other aspects of feeling guilty I think what I said to Michelle was, and I'm only talking about myself now, and this is my personal view. All of us are a bit like a battery. We have so much energy. And I do not believe that if you have 100% energy in the day, that you can give 100% of that energy to your work and then go home and give 100%. And what I said to her was that I have an issue in that if my wife or my partner is out working and is at the top of her game, there is no way that she can be at the top of her game and give 100% to her the children, right? Our home life, our relationship that we have with each other, right? Because you have to choose. That doesn't mean that there aren't some people who can do it, because there are, right? And one of the things that I said to Michelle is there are certain careers and certain types of people where, for example, if the man is at the top of what he does, but there's a lot of flexibility in that. For example, if you're like a property developer, as a property developer, you have a lot of flexibility as a father to be able to, or rather as a woman, to be able to be at home with your kids and still run a successful business. But a lot of jobs, particularly if you go through the academic institutions, will require you to be there from 7 until 8, or they're going to have office working hours. There isn't going to be a lot of flexibility, which makes it very, very, very difficult in order to be able to juggle the two. And so going back to my point was that part of the reason why I'm single is that the woman that I would want to attract in my life is so rare that I would need to become the kind of person who would be worthy of being able to attract such a person. And I guess it's the thing that I would share with you, and maybe you want to reflect on this in your own life, because so many of us in life want the exception. So many of us in life want the anomaly. So many of us want the greatness, the special. But in reality, if you look at ourselves, we're not worthy of having that that which is unique. And I say this to you because I hear so many people all the time in my life who I come across say, well, I want this great man, or I want to have these great types of friends. But in reality, when you begin to look at that person who wants these great types of friends, that person is not really somebody who would be a great friend. That person isn't open-minded. That person isn't got resources and isn't spontaneous. That person, it has the attitude that unless you give to me, I won't give to you. They won't just give willingly. And I say that to you because you may be sat there a bit like where I was, where you're expecting all of these things from the government, from your workplace, from your partner, from different aspects of humanity and of life. And I wonder whether you are actually fulfilling your end of the bargain, or are you having the attitude that so many people have, which is that I will become this when I get this, right? I will become a great boyfriend when I have a girlfriend. But in reality, and this is actually something that I was reflecting on, in reality, you talk about the fact that you want somebody who is clean, somebody who is organized, somebody who is driven, somebody who knows what they want. But let's come to your house and let's have a look around at where you live. Not when you've tied it up, but as a general rule, let us come round and let's inspect you. You talk about your attitude as being somebody who's positive. Okay, well, let's follow you around for the next couple of weeks and let's see what on average, what your attitude is. Not when things are going well, not when you've got momentum on your side, but as a general rule, let's look at the attitude that you usually have. Are you a positive person? Do you have enthusiasm? Are you somebody who has got passion, who's got drive? Are you somebody who's disciplined? And I say that to you because, again, I think so much of the issues that we experience as human beings come from not putting enough responsibility on our end of the bargain. And instead, we put a lot more emphasis on other people doing what they should be doing. Of course, the government should be there to support you. Of course, your workplace should be there to be able to help with your mental health. But the question is, are you doing the basic things that you are capable of doing in order to leverage your mental health, in order to leverage your income so that you are not in a position where you have to rely on somebody else? I would, as I say, I was thinking about this, particularly when it was coming to pensions. And I think that there are so, part of what triggered me thinking about pensions was the fact that in France at the moment, obviously there's loads of riots and stuff like that around them raising the pension age. And I was thinking to myself, why are you guys so angry? If you have the belief system that you should primarily take care of yourselves and you should be trying to better your life and leverage your life in such a way that you can build multiple streams of income, then it will mean that you don't have to necessarily have the government. You don't have to necessarily rely on the government. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not stupid. I understand that there are challenges that every single one of us is going to face. And not everybody, as I say, is going to be able to be one of those people who has multiple streams of income. I get that. But my question is, and which is what I pose to you, is if you are somebody who has the ability to become the anomaly, to become rare, number one, are you doing the bits that you can do in order to do that? And number two, why are you not doing them if you're capable of doing them? And if you've got all of these challenges, have you started working through those challenges? So that's the first thing that I was really reflecting on and I was thinking about. And I don't know whether it's of any sort of value to you or any advantage to you. One of the other things that I was reflecting on is another quote that I heard on Instagram, I think, which said that time reveals a lot of things. Just wait. And I do think that this statement is very, very true. As many of you will know, one of my books that I've written, yet to be published, depending on when you're listening to this, is a book that talks about the 5 spheres of life. The 5 areas of life that you have to be able to understand in order to leverage your life in such a way that you begin to win more, so that you have momentum on your side, so that you can get on the good side of life. And one of those things that I talk about are principles. And principles are things that are consistently around, that do not change, such as the law of gravity. And one of the things that is consistent, a principle that is consistent, is time, right? Time is going to be a major factor and is going to play a major role in all of our lives. You can say, I don't like it. You can say whatever you want to say, but so many things will be revealed with time. And so I do think that one of the most important things that is so under-taught about is about the importance of managing your life, about understanding the different seasons that you're going through, about understanding when to do certain things and when not to do certain things. And one of the things that I talk about in that book is, at what point, when we're growing up, our life is essentially, and our time is essentially managed for us, whether it be through the education system, through the hospitals, through holidays, through the seasons. Our life is essentially managed for us pretty much in terms of our timings. And at a certain point, there's a switch that happens that goes from our parents and our guardians and all of these different systems that have been set up, whether it be the education system or our parents, and there is a switch between there and us managing our own life. And the question that I pose to you is, when was that switch for you? I was doing a workshop, and I asked students in that workshop, it was a mental health workshop, and I asked students in that workshop, when do you think you should be responsible for managing your mental health? When should it be your responsibility, and when should it be your parents and the government's responsibility? And the kids gave me various answers. Some people were like, as soon as you're conscious enough to know what mental health is. Some said when you're 18. Some said when you're 13. Some said whilst you're still living with your parents. And so what I've come to realize is all of us have different definitions about timings, about when we think we should take responsibility of different aspects of our lives. And the question that I ask you, and is something to think about, is, have you made the switch in your life between other people managing your time, your seasons, the different phases of your life, and you managing it? Or are you still putting the emphasis, the responsibility for these different entities to manage the different phases of your life, right? And I talk about this because I was talking to yesterday when I was having that conversation with my neighbor that I discussed earlier on about finding somebody. One of the things that I said to her was, feminism is this really amazing thing for some women, but there's a huge percentage of women who feminism doesn't work for, because feminism, well, certainly modern feminism today, is built on the pretense that as a person, as a woman, you need to put your career ahead of everything else. That your career is going to be the single number one most important thing in your life. And the reality of life is, if you speak to people in the world, if you speak to women who are older, who've lived life in multiple different countries, for a lot of people, and again, there's always an exception to every rule because there's always an anomaly, for the majority of women, family and friendship is the most important thing to them in their life. Of course, that does not mean that being independent, pursuing your dreams, pursuing your career is not important. Of course it's important. But what I said to Michelle yesterday is that as a woman, you have to be so careful that you don't go on the timing and the phrasing and the time scale of the feminist movement as opposed to your own biological clock, because you may decide, actually, I would at some point absolutely love to have a child. But the reality is, and this is what I said to Michelle yesterday, there is this social thing that unfortunately you can try to fight or you can just accept, which is that as a single woman, as you get older, less and less of your options become available, right? And the example that I said to her is, look, when you are 22 years of age, let's say there's 100 men, you could practically have all of those 100 men, but your chances of securing those 100 men get smaller and smaller and smaller as time moves on, because some of them will turn out to be gay, some of them will get married, some of them will move abroad to a different country, some of them will die of a heart attack in a car crash or whatever it may be. And so your pool of men who are, as you define, attractive to you, do have the level of education or belief system or values that you have, begins to get more and more and more and more dwindled down. And if you're not careful, it is very easy to get to an age like 40 or whatever it may be, and you've missed your opportunity, right? You've missed your opportunity to start a family. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that you can't turn to things like IVF or whatever it may be, have a surrogate, adopt. But what I'm saying is, and this is just, again, this is just from what I've observed, I would say that the majority of women would like the opportunity to actually be able to give birth to their own children, as well as having the option to adopt or whatever it may be, right? And so it's just something that I encourage you to think about. Really think about the timing of things. And actually, you know, I remember, and I think I've talked about this previously in a video before, where I talked about my friend Razvan. And I said to Razvan is one of my friends who, he wants to become a goalkeeper at the top levels in football. And one of the things that I said to him is, look, Razvan, there has to come a point in your life where you make a decision about whether you're going to go all in and continue giving 100% into becoming a footballer, or you have to start putting your life strategically so that you don't get to 30 and have nothing. Because if you give your all to football and to becoming a goalkeeper, and he's 22 at the moment, and let's say you do that until you're 28, 29, and you have no other qualifications, you have no other experience, you are going to be in a very awkward position, because yes, of course, he's a good-looking lad, but the reality is, being good looking isn't enough in order to stabilize all the different aspects of your life, whether that be looking at your pension, it'd be looking at finding a spouse, it'd be looking at getting a deposit for a house. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm talking about living a holistic kind of life. And I think, and just reflecting on this, even as I say this, I think so many of us in life, we live a life that is only one-legged. There isn't a bunch of pillars underneath our life which makes us holistic, which means that if this doesn't work out, at least we have these various other factors. And actually, if you look at the data around people who end up becoming depressed and who end up becoming suicidal and who are unhappy with their lives, is because these individuals put their all into one thing. And even something that I said to Michelle yesterday, that you have to be very careful about a phrase that I say, which I've had to learn, which is never make anything everything. You have to be very careful not to say religion is everything to me, or marriage is everything to me, or my work is everything to me. It can't be everything, because one of the things that you have to calculate into your life is crisis. You have to calculate and still remember that, yes, of course, I can become successful, but that does not protect me from life. Competence and success does not protect people from life, right? That doesn't mean, of course, that you don't have faith or you don't put your faith in your relationship. But what I'm trying to say is, don't put so much in your relationship that you have no friendships, that you have no work-life balance, that you have no hobbies of your own, that you have no money of your own, right? This is where people get exploited. If you look, and I've studied a lot of cults, many people who are lured into cults and who are taken advantage of is because they've said that religion is everything to me. God is everything to me. And you know, recently I was watching a documentary about some man in America who some tragic thing happened where the FBI was gonna essentially started a fire in a building, and this man managed to convince parents and children to stay in this building because of some apocalypse and whatever. And some people survived that incident. And one of the things that I was hearing all these people talking about the incident, and it's like they never considered there could be any alternative. And when I talk about never make anything everything, I'm talking about the fact that you have to be open to, when you say I'm waiting for this is a conversation I had with Michelle, which is why I'm saying this to you. I had a conversation with Michelle, and I said to Michelle, you never want to put yourself in a position where you say that there is a right man out there for me and I will find him. And what I said to Michelle is, when you say something like that, you put such a huge amount of emphasis and pressure on yourself to be in the right position, to be ready to attract this person, for this person to find you, for you to be in the right phase of your life. The amount of pressure that you put on the law of attraction and whatever is so huge that I said to her, look, you want to position your life so that if, of course, this amazing man, you position yourself so that you can be as ready as you can be in order to attract this man, but also that when you attract if this man never comes, it doesn't actually matter. It's not the be and all. And so, again, that's what I've kind of been reflecting on, and I would encourage you to really think about. I don't know if that came across the way that I was intending it for it to come across, but I've just seen that so many people give their all, and it's like, dude, you're giving too much of yourself. And you have to start examining and looking at your life and actually seeing, have I gone too far? Do I need to turn around? Do I need to change tactics? Do I need to, is this friendship really working for me? Right? I've gone through a period in the last couple of weeks where I've basically deleted anyone off social media who I don't come in direct contact with on a frequent basis, because I don't really see the point in continuing to have all these people on my social media when in reality I don't even interact with them. Now, that may seem crazy, it may seem harsh, but it's things like this that I have to reflect on, that I have to think about myself. And it's things like that that I also encourage you to think about and to reflect on. Maybe, like this last weekend, I went through a phase where I just basically throw away everything that I have not used in the last 2 weeks. If I haven't used it, I've chucked it away. And if I don't intend on using it in the next 3 months, I've chucked it away. And you would be shocked at the amount of things that I've thrown away. And I thought, but I'm going to miss this. But what am I going to do? I would survive. Trust me. And that's something that I encourage you to just really think about, that timing. So there's so many more things I can talk to you about, but I think that's a good place for us to finish today. But I encourage you to reflect on your journal entries. I encourage you to think about your life, to think about realizations that you have, to think about principles that have worked for you and that haven't worked for you. Maybe you're at a stage in your life right now where it's time for you to, a bit like a snake does, it sheds its skin. It's time for you to get rid of things that are no longer important. It's time for you to get rid of relationships that are no longer important. It's time for you to move from a town that no longer works for you. It's time for you to start strategically positioning your life where maybe you've been renting for the last 10 years. Maybe it's now time to pull back on the amount of entertainment and whatever that you've been doing and eating out, and keep your life very simple and start thinking about buying your own house, right? Yes, it may take you 3 or 4 years to be able to do it, but start thinking about it. Start positioning your life so that you can actually aim in the direction of what you want. And just as I say, this is ultimately your life, and this is what I say to everybody. So you've got to decide what is important to you. But I just think we want to live an intentional life. We want to live a conscious life. And that's what I encourage you to try to live. Don't just keep going and keep going and keep going, and never stopping and never reflecting and never analyzing your life, because it is possible to live a life where you get to a point where you're like, I have regrets. I shouldn't have done that. I should have looked at that quicker. I shouldn't have stayed as long as I did. I should have moved on. I should have speeded up. Have you thought about that kind of stuff in your life? Thank you very much for watching. I'd love to hear what your journal entries are, so comment below, write them down, and I shall see you next week. Bye for now.